All right, well, good morning, everyone. It is always such an honor and a joy to moderate a panel here at Summit, but I have to say this is a really special treat for me to sit down with my colleagues Alia and Colleen. Believe it or not, actually in the hustle and bustle of our everyday work at Code for America, we don't actually get to sit down face to face like this and just talk about big ideas like using automation in government to actually break down barriers and increase access to government services and benefits. So I've been really looking forward to this. Do you think we can just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So you have both been working on this issue for a while, how we can use automation within government. And I'm curious, Alia, if we can start with you and talk a bit about how your team started experimenting with automation and what you're seeing coming up in automatic record clearance.
Totally. So excitedly, automatic record clearance across the country has been a thing for 6 years now, so starting in Pennsylvania in 2018. And we have 12 states that have passed policies and are now implementing them. And this work is really important because 1 in 3 people in this country have a criminal record, and criminal records pose barriers to so many things: jobs, housing, education. There are literally thousands of legal restrictions that exist for people who have criminal records. And the problem is that in existing petition-based processes for applying for record clearance, 90% of people who are eligible don't get relief. It's too hard. And so automatic record clearance really closes that access gap and reduces a ton of administrative burden for people because a person doesn't have to apply. They don't have to do anything. Government does it on people's behalf with information that they already have. And so while an automatic record clearance process is automatic for people, right, they don't have to do anything, it's not automatic for government. Government still has work. And that's really where automation has power. And we saw at Code for America pretty early on that there were opportunities to use automation in our work in supporting government. Back in 2019, California passed their first automatic record clearance policy, and we helped the state implement it by developing an application that could read hundreds of thousands of lines of conviction data in just a couple seconds. And that technology helped identify about 144,000 records to be cleared. In Utah, we partnered with the administrative office of the courts there to help them implement their policy. And we use entity resolution to deduplicate their criminal history data, which was an important first step in figuring out who was eligible. And then took that deduplicated data, developed an eligibility determination script, and through that technology, over 300,000 people will get their records cleared, and more to come in the future. Yeah, super exciting. Yes. Awesome. And now we're obviously continuing the work. What we're doing now is trying to identify as many common implementation challenges as we can across the country in states that are passing these policies, and then develop proofs of concept that use automation to help solve for those challenges, and ultimately try to get relief to as many people as possible.
Amazing. Thank you. And Colleen, what about you? What are you seeing on the horizon for automation within the safety net and social services?
Yeah, we see lots of use cases for automation in the safety net. I think Medicaid's got a good example here. The Medicaid program requires that states use the data that they already have available when they're processing renewals for Medicaid. So essentially, the consumer has to do nothing, and the state does the renewal automatically. This was hugely important when COVID-era flexibilities were ending, and millions of Americans had to renew their coverage, some of whom for the very first time, and so states were overwhelmed processing these applications. We worked with the state of Minnesota in 2022 to redesign their renewal process, things like simplifying the notices that were sent to people, automating those notices, and we reduced the time that it takes a caseworker to process a renewal from 70 minutes, more than an hour per case, to 11. And that translated to more than 120,000 people every year retaining their healthcare coverage.
That's awesome. So I know we all have, especially in this room, a lot of excitement about all of the positive benefits that automation can have within government. But I'm curious, what are some of the blind spots that we need to be mindful of here? And how can we help government not overlook equity in the pursuit of efficiency through automation?
Automating the delivery of benefits is a great way to reduce administrative burden, but we have to be thinking about how we make sure that we're not codifying existing inequities in the system when we do that. So I'll give an example. Summer EBT, hugely impactful program, brand new program, the first of its kind in 50 years. connects kids to food during the summer months when we see childhood food insecurity skyrockets because kids aren't in school buildings. The regs actually require that states automatically enroll kids in this program based on eligibility information that we already have for those families for SNAP, for example, or school meal programs. Now, imagine a parent filling out an application for one of those programs and they include the accent in a letter in their surname or a hyphen in their surname. And then when they submit that application, the back-end system removes that hyphen or removes that accent because the system can't store it. Biases like these, we know, disproportionately impact kids of color. And we have to be thinking critically about how we address these culturally and racial biases in the system that are already baked in before we automate them.
Definitely. What about you,
Yeah.
Alia?
So whenever we work with government to design and help implement automatic record clearance policies, we're always thinking about how we can help them be more efficient. But of course, this has the potential to come at the expense of equity. So to give an example, in a lot of states, to be eligible for record clearance, you have to have paid fines and fees related to your record. An issue, though, is that in a lot of states, while they might have data related to whether somebody was required at the front end to pay a fine or fee, they might not have data that is super accessible or understandable about whether somebody actually paid the fine or fee. And so a potential solution that a state could take is to say, well, if there's any data that exists related to fines and fees in somebody's record, they're just automatically going to be excluded from eligibility. So seeing efficiency at the cost of a lot of people getting record clearance. And it is a lot of people. A ton of people are sentenced to fines and fees, and a lot of people can't afford to pay them. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, obviously impacting lower income communities more. And so there's a more straightforward approach that we always propose and that states have taken, which is instead of using this data to disqualify people, just make a policy change and say fines and fees is not a disqualifier. So people can get access to record clearance regardless of whether they've paid fines and fees. And this is totally a politically viable option. States like Pennsylvania have done it. We've seen that. And so again, we're trying to maximize for efficiency, but we're always thinking creatively and flexibly about how to make sure that it does not come at the expense of a lot of people being left out.
Thank you. So I know we just have a minute here left. I'm curious what you can leave us here. Sort of where are you seeing hope, potential, or lessons?
I mean, I think what we're fundamentally talking about is a shift of burden. We're talking about shifting the burden from the individual to submit additional documentation, to call the state and figure out, get a status update on their case, and shifting that burden to the government, who largely has this information already. And ultimately, that is going to lead to a more efficient and more equitable government that works for all. And I wake up every single morning knowing that we can do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, we recorded an audio series where we talked to people across the country who had criminal records, who spoke super candidly about the ongoing impact of having a criminal record on their lives and what it would feel like to have that burden lifted. It is still on our website. You all should check it out. It's amazing. And we heard the same thing from people over and over again, which was that they just wanted to move forward with their lives in meaningful ways. Just like a core fundamental desire that we all have. And so using automation in automatic record clearance is really critical to being able to get at the scale of impact that we are envisioning, that we're hoping for and working towards, which is records cleared for millions of people, because that is the scale of the challenge in the country. And ultimately opening up new opportunities to thrive for people.
Thank you. Well, thank you both for sharing these examples of how automation in government can actually help us be more human with each other. So, thank you all.
Thank you.